Well, here we are with our new state senator, John Cronin, and congratulations on your victory. A close victory, but nonetheless, a win is a win, right?
That's right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me here today, Scott.
Well, you're very welcome. And we'll begin by having you introduce yourself to our audience and give us a little bit of background, your upbringing, your education. You're a local guy. You're a military veteran. Go ahead and jump in any time.
Sure. So I was born and raised in the district. I was born in Leominster, and I grew up in Fitchburg and Lunenburg. Had the opportunity to join the military when I was 19. Went to West Point, graduated, commissioned as an infantry officer. And that's really how I spent, my 20s. I was able to deploy to Afghanistan twice in key leadership positions. I was a rifle platoon leader. I was the second in command on my second tour of the same infantry company. And I look back at kind of that period as really the formative time of my life, and just got to serve with some great men and women. But was honorably discharged as a captain in 2018. Came back home right away. I did some legal advocacy work at a legal services center in Boston for veterans. And started law school, and had the bright idea to run for state senate about a year ago, exactly. And I'm glad to be, really just to have the privilege to serve and continue serving in this capacity. But won the election in November, was sworn in January 6th. And the date of taping, I don't even know what today is. Is it January 18th? But we're standing up, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, obviously some challenging times right now for the community. It's a challenging time to stand up in office, but one of the things I'm proud of, we've assembled a great team and staff, and are just building really good relationships with local, state, and federal leaders, and working hard and excited for the future, and to help lead the region out of really unprecedented, challenging times.
Well, something you said inspired this next question, which wasn't planned. You called it, I had a bright idea about a year ago. What inspired this bright idea? Why did you decide to do this?
I've always believed that leadership matters, and I think that is something that is intrinsic when I reflect on my experiences in Afghanistan and leading, and seeing others lead, right? And seeing that the impact that one person can have on an organization, or a group of people, or a region. And I believe I had something to give, and running for state senate was an opportunity to serve in a different capacity, but to use the same skills that I knew I could bring to the table, right? Bringing people together, creating a shared vision, and just trying to grip hands with people in the community to try to lead, because I believe it's important. I think when you look at our country, there are a lot of people who don't belong in public service who are there, and that's I've got a rule that I don't talk about national politics, so I'll leave it at that. But it's a time where we need good people who are in it for the right reasons, to serve others, to step up, and to lead. And so a year ago in January, that's what led me to go and pull papers and led me here today.
And what a lot of folks may not understand or realize is that your district is not only Worcester, but also Middlesex counties. 11 communities, including Fitchburg, Gardner, Leominster, the three cities in the district. How are you going to balance 11 cities and towns? Everybody has a little something different on their plate. There's a lot of similarities, like the pandemic is a problem for all of us. But each city and town kind of has a different agenda. How do you manage all of it?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the problems facing Townsend or Bolton are different than the problems facing Fitchburg or Leominster. The communities look different. But I think, to your point, how do you balance those different forms of government, different leaders? The thing I'm really proud of is we've built a great staff, and one person in particular, my district director, Susan Templeton, has worked really intimately in North Central Massachusetts for her entire career. She's a former vice president of the chamber. She was Representative Naughton's chief of staff for more than 10 years. And so she's worked intimately in communities where I don't have a lot of background or experience: Lancaster, Berlin, Sterling, Clinton. So that helps. But I think the most important thing, and this is how I've really been spending my time, is to start building those relationships with key leaders, to be responsive, to be open, And just to to show up and listen. I'm going to the Lancaster Board of Selectmen tonight, then the Lunenburg at 7, and Wednesday I'll be at Clinton. So it's those type of things, and it's just being present. I think that gets you really far to build trust with local leaders.
And that was kind of what my next question was going to be, but you've answered it. You're creating that bridge now to the different leaders in the cities and towns. But do you come in this into this position with some priorities of your own as well? Absolutely.
So I think, and we talked a little bit about it, but we are in unprecedented, uncharted territories. And the most important thing, my number one priority, is to help people through this public health crisis, which means, one, getting through the public health crisis. And the big picture is 2021 is going to look more like 2020 for longer than we want it to, right? But we're saving lives by social distancing, by being smart, by washing our hands, by wearing a mask, no matter how sick people are of it, and I'm sick of it, we all are. But it's the right thing, and it's the right way to protect others in the community. And we're going to need to be patient. We had a briefing with Secretary Sutters last week, and there's no good way to roll out this vaccine to everybody, right? There's competing priorities. There's so many people who need access to it. But the big picture, and this is not current, and it won't be current when we air in February, but the state was receiving 40,000 vaccine doses a week about 10 days ago. And to get where we need to go, right, 30,000 people need to be vaccinated a day to vaccinate everybody in the state by June, wow. Right? So we've got a supply issue that we need to fix, and I'm hoping, President-elect Biden will be the president. I hope we've got an effective federal government that's going to be able to drive that, and that's going to be really helpful. But we also need to think long-term about economic opportunity and economic development here in the region. There are so many small businesses that have just been so hurt by, and none more than restaurants and bars too. So when we get through that public health crisis, we'll have an opportunity to support those businesses again in a way that they need. And then I think, maybe I can talk a little bit more about it too, but there's the old adage, never let a crisis go to waste, right? And I think that means two things for North Central Massachusetts particularly in light of the Democrats winning the Senate, right? I think two things that were held up were state and local aid from the federal government and an infrastructure package. And I think in the next 2 years, there's an opportunity for local and state leaders like myself to work with the federal delegation at the congressional level and really work hard to make some really smart investments that are going to set us up for long-term economic opportunity here in the region.
Now, you were talking about starting off your political career with the great good fortune of having to do it in the middle of this devastating pandemic. The governor's office, Governor Charlie Baker, regularly communicates with the public, keeps us all up to date. Is there anything more you would like to see coming from the governor's office in the way of communication or information?
I can tell you the governor's been responsive to our office, and we've reached out on behalf of, and we've had an office for 10 days, but we reached out on behalf of funeral directors with the other members of the delegation to make them in priority one, just because they're really outward facing. I know the governor's been responsive to other legislative efforts to prioritize and put out a plan for first responders. So, the governor's got a really hard job right now, and I'm not one to make political hay out of bad choices and worse choices. So I think we really want to partner with the governor's office and work collaboratively, but in the ways that I mentioned too, to help prioritize different groups of people as this rollout of the vaccine proceeds. And again, however we can, as we reopen, to do it responsibly, but in a way that really supports our small businesses who need a voice right now on Beacon Hill. So that's really the role I see, specifically with my office and the delegation and working with the administration.
One of the things, and we're talking about this, the staff here at FATV and I were talking about this because, I happen to be over 65, and the question was asked, have you received any information about being vaccinated? And I said, well, no, it's very confusing right now. I'm not really sure what's going on, or if I were to, and my wife and I were to be in line for to be vaccinated, where do we go to do that? So there's still a lot of questions, more questions I think than answers, and that may be something that needs to be worked on as well.
Absolutely, and I would point everybody, and I'll put this out again, but on our official Facebook page, Senator John Cronin, we did put out some state resources this week, which answer directly those questions. Where am I in the schedule for vaccine rollout, based on whatever grouping you're in, right? 65 older, 75 older, first responders, essential healthcare workers, and then also where to get that vaccine. So I would point, we have that link on our Facebook, and it would direct you to the state website.
That's great. That's great information.
Yeah.
One of the political positions you've taken publicly is your support of raising taxes on incomes of over $1 million. And what I'd like you to do is tell us what you see that additional tax revenue being targeted for.
Yeah. So my number one priority is economic recovery and economic growth long term for this region. And I think there are investments that we can't afford to make. And we need to invest in ourselves to get industry, to get business leaders, to get entrepreneurs to invest in us. And so what I see that revenue, and it's $1 billion a year in education and $1 billion a year for public transportation. What I am going to try to target that revenue to, if it passes, and that's remains to be seen, and it will be a ballot question most likely, but is really two areas in education. The first is early childhood education, and the second would be increasing access to vocational training. I had a conversation with President Vanderhoeven at Mount Wachusett last week. And this is something I talked about during my campaign, but the average age of an electrician in central Massachusetts is 57 years old. And one of the state reps remarked, you know, if we don't do something about this, we're going to be at home with the lights out and our toilets plugged, right? Like we need a skilled labor force, and we need to fix that. So we need more access for kids to be able to go and get skilled trades. And that to me is a passport to the middle class and is so important. And then in terms of public transportation is so prohibitive out here to seniors, to people with disabilities, to students in central Massachusetts, and we need to increase access both on the commuter rail, right? It's more than $4,000 for a yearly pass to go work in Boston. That's a prohibitive barrier to opportunity for working class and middle class families, and we need to do something about that. And then improving our bus service here, and also a transportation infrastructure crisis. Just here in Fitchburg alone, I talked a lot about this too, but you know, we need $70 million in investment to get our roads and bridges up to grade. So over the long term, that's going to set us up for economic growth and equitable economic growth too. Those investments in education and transportation infrastructure.
Now, I did read, as I was doing some research on you, that you have described State Representative and fellow military veteran Hank Naughton of Clinton as a role model. Tell us about that.
Definitely, and I'll bring it back to Fitchburg too. This was a couple years ago, but there's a great bit that Mike Barnacle did. Mike Barnacle's a Fitchburg guy, right? I think he went to St. Bernard's, and I know his family's got deep roots in Fitchburg. And this is probably more than 30 years old now, but he did a great interview with Tip O'Neill at the Capitol when Tip O'Neill was in his last year or so as Speaker of the House. And Mike asked the speaker, like, how do you want to be remembered? And you know, Tip O'Neill's sitting there smoking a cigar, and he goes, well, I just hope like people remember me and say I never forgot who I was and where I came from. So when I think of that, I kind of think of Hank Naughton, and just he's somebody who is in public service for the right reasons and has served his community in so many ways, as a lawyer, as a soldier, as a legislator. So he's one of the good guys, and yeah, definitely somebody to definitely a role model in a time where we need some more good role models.
Well, Senator Cronin, we're coming to an end here, and I would like you to tell us about contact information, how people can get in touch with you or your office, and also where to go for additional information on things like vaccinations.
Absolutely. So the best way to get in touch with my office and for all our contact information is Senator John J. Cronin on Facebook. I don't have our number memorized yet, but it's. But I was joking with It's been, and State Senator Flanagan or Commissioner Flanagan let me know this too. The number has not changed in 30 years. So I think Mary Padula had the same office number. So if you've called the state senator in the past 30 years, that's how to get in touch with me. And then john.cronin@masssenate.gov. Just email me directly. And one of the things that we're really going to try to, and do pride ourselves already in, is being responsive to constituents and getting back to people and doing the people's work.
Well, congratulations again on your victory. Good luck to you in the years ahead, and thank you for joining us here on North Central Journal.
Look forward to coming back soon, Scott. Thank you.
State Representative Mike Kushmerek, and I want to begin by congratulating you on a victory to get you from the Fitchburg City Council into the State House in Boston, a little over 1,900 votes, and you ran against a former executive director here at FATV, a former member of the board of directors, Glenn Fossa. And what I found interesting, Mike, in doing some research for this interview was that you and Glenn had an opportunity after the election to get together and have a little breakfast. How'd that go?
That's exactly it. You know, Glenn and I were friends before the campaign, and we remained committed to, no matter what, we're going to be friends after this. And from the first days of the campaign, we set out and agreed we're going to break bread after this, and this district and our city of Fitchburg deserves, you know, better than the mudslinging that you see at the federal level. And, you know, our businesses and our residents deserve to have a campaign based on civility and based on the issues, not the personalities, but, you know, the philosophical differences that we see for this region. And so I really congratulate Glenn. It was a wonderful campaign. And then afterwards, to be able to break bread, we met at the Cozy Corner, we sat down, we had coffee and breakfast, and we laughed and we joked about some of the same similarities and kind of the war stories, if you will. We had a great time.
You talked during the campaign quite a bit about your growing up, and it mirrors, I think, what a lot of people have gone through, are going through. It was a difficult upbringing with homelessness, welfare, addiction, some mental health issues in the family. How has that part of your life impacted and at the same time prepared you for what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it's really, I guess, formed the essence of who I am, right? Those experiences have really shaped me and my worldview. But at the end of the day, I think you hit it on the head of these issues are not unique to me. And I did not go through these issues alone. And, you know, so many households across this district and across the Commonwealth suffer and struggle with those same issues each and every day. And I realized for me in telling my story that not only was I not alone, and it was a healing process talking about this on the campaign, but also the point of me telling these stories was to convey to others that same sentiment of you're not alone, and you're not facing this alone. We're in this together as a community, and that there are people here who can help you. You shouldn't be ashamed of these issues. We all have baggage. We do. We all have stories, and we've all had struggles. We've all fallen, and we all have to get back up. And I think the more that people are reassured that we all go through it, and there's going to be a helping hand there reaching down to help you get back up and to help you move forward. And so for me, that was that point of bringing those stories up during the campaign. And, you know, 3 weeks on to the new job, we're hearing people feel comfortable. They're calling us, they're emailing us, and they're talking about their stories and their struggles and saying, how can you help me? How do I work my way out of this situation? And to be able to support them and guide them and provide resources to help them get out of a bad situation and get past it, that's critical for us. And I think that's critical for us as a district too. And
something we're all a part of right now is this ongoing pandemic, which is still horrendous. I heard today a statistic that said every 26 seconds somebody is dying from COVID-19.
That's right.
How are you going to jump into that as a state representative, and what would you like to see happen from a state level for the city of Fitchburg and your precinct in Lunenburg that you represent?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is it's a critical issue, and it's certainly not how we anticipated the first. If you asked me a year ago, how would I anticipate the first weeks and months of my term starting? This wouldn't have been it. But certainly, this is a situation we're in. I don't think it's easy. I don't think there's any easy answers or silver bullets that the governor has. That said, I do think, we need to make sure that the vaccine rollout happens more smoothly. We need to hasten this process. You're right. People are dying every second and every minute in this country and across our Commonwealth. And every time there's a vaccine on the shelf and not put in someone's arm, it's an unconscionable moment of we need to speed this process up. We need to make it as smooth as possible, and we need to make it as clear to residents about the time frame, the expectation, and the phase that they're in. And so for my part, I've been joining other Gateway City colleagues across the Commonwealth of advocating for speeding up vaccinations and prioritization for gateway communities. We know that the hardest hit communities have been the urban areas like gateway cities, such as Fitchburg, and many of our surrounding areas, Leominster included. And we know these areas have been hardest hit both economically as well as from the pandemic. And we know that the learning rates and the rate of learning have been slowed here, particularly compared to online learning. Is very different in Newton or Watertown than it is in a place like Fitchburg or Lunenburg. So I think it's critical that we make sure we get those vaccinations out to our school population and the teachers and the staff so we can get students back in the classroom, parents back to work to lessen that economic impact. So no matter how you look at the pandemic, there is a lot of work to do. We need to get the vaccines out, but we also need to make sure that there's the resources and the information to support businesses and residents alike.
You were sworn in along with the new state senator, John Cronin, who happens to be a resident of Lunenburg. We had an opportunity, and folks will see the interview with John that we did for North Central Journal. And not only is John from Lunenburg and representing his hometown, as a state senator, Fitchburg is part of his district. How are you anticipating working together with State Senator Cronin?
Well, I think the world of Senator Cronin. Honestly, it's been a wonderful partnership. It began before we were even elected, and since Election Day, it has been a fairly seamless transition between our teams. We're in constant communication. Honestly, I can't point to a day recently that we haven't spoken, if not multiple times in a day. And so for us, I think it was a real focus on not only collaboration and communication, but also focusing on the regional delegation, of making sure that there is a team not just of a senator and a representative, but of 8 state representatives coordinating with our state senator, making sure that we can fight for this region as a whole. And so it was, I think, New Year's Eve, and Senator Cronin elect at the time, and myself, we were working on a letter on behalf of Fitchburg State University and the city, trying to make sure that we could secure a critical line item in the economic development bill that was passed right at the deadline of this past legislative session, advocating in conjunction with Representative Hay and Mayor DiNatale to make sure we can get critical funding for that Fitchburg State Theater project on our downtown. The funding came in, and it was exciting to be able to partner together before we were even in office, really trying to make sure that people understood the critical issues for our district.
You shared a story with us before we started the interview, and sadly, you and Senator Cronin both suffered losses of parents. Your mom recently died, and Senator Cronin's dad recently died, within a short period of time of one another. Tell us that story about how Senator Cronin reacted to your loss. Yeah,
it was really touching. My mother passed on a Sunday night, and I took Monday kind of quietly, and I called a close friend, and I said, if you could just call and let a couple of the key leaders in the city know, and know that I'm going to need a few days to just process and take care of family arrangements. And within 15 minutes of placing that phone call, Senator Cronin was at my doorstep, and he just said no words and handed this incredible spread of food across. And he knew, the last thing you need is, is a long speech here, but it was that show of we're in this together. and your family. And you know, for me, that meant the world, and that what a wonderful way to start a relationship off as colleagues. And unfortunately, he lost his father just this past week. So within 8 days of each other, we both lost a parent. And I think for us, it was, you know, it was a bonding experience. If we're both grieving together, but we both realized that there were critical needs in this district. And you know, as sad as it is, we know we need to get to work right away. So we grieve a little bit together, and we share our common stories and some laughs and some tears together. And I think, you know, that will only solidify that bond in our relationship moving forward.
We mentioned that you represent the city of Fitchburg and Precinct B in Lunenburg, which is known as the 3rd Worcester District.
Absolutely.
What priorities do you have for the 3rd Worcester District going forward this year?
Sure. You know, I think education, economic development, transportation, these are critical issues, and healthcare. And I think, you know, there are some differences for each part of the district. You know, some of the needs that Fitchburg has in education are a little bit different from the needs that Lunenburg has, but they still have needs in those areas, and we still need to fight and to advocate. And then there's a lot of overlap too between the two municipalities. And so, you know, healthcare, we talked about the pandemic. This is touching every community, but it's certainly impacting North Central Massachusetts disproportionately to other areas. We know that the unemployment rates are higher in North Central Massachusetts than the rest of the Commonwealth. And we also know that, you know, areas like transportation, the commuter rail impact is real. You know, they're cutting back on schedule, particularly over the weekend. Senator Cronin and I are working on that, as well as Representatives Zlotnick and Higgins. We care passionately about these things. And so there's a whole slew of issues, but I'd say, you know, education, healthcare, economic development, and transportation are top among them. And I've been excited so far to start those conversations with leaders in Lunenburg and municipal leaders in Fitchburg to make sure we're correctly prioritizing those areas.
Now, you've got an opportunity here, because this is your interview and your introduction to our audience as the state representative of the 3rd Worcester District. What message would you like to leave today with the constituents that you now represent?
Sure. I mean, more than anything, it's, you know, yes, we're new. Yes, you know, we're weeks on the job. But we're excited and we're passionate to get to work. We know that there are needs, and we know that you have a voice, and we want to make sure that that voice is heard on Beacon Hill. So please do not hesitate to contact us at any time. Really, it's, you know, whether it's by Facebook, by email. My email is michael.kushmerek@mahouse.gov. Our district office right at City Hall. We just moved in this week. We're hoping to have office hours in the next couple of months when pandemic conditions allow, but you can call our office at any time. It goes right to my cell phone if you call our office at City Hall. It's 978-829-1954.
Well, again, we want to offer our congratulations, Michael. We're, I think, collectively here, so happy for you. And moving forward, we hope that you will take the advantage of FATV whenever you need to get a message out, or whenever you would like to make an appearance. I'm sure that the doors will always be open for you.
I can't wait. Thank you.